Hello. It's 4:20. Let's get high. Originally, when I began this broadcast, I guess a couple of months ago, maybe, that my idea was to encourage people to ask questions, and then I could, in real time answer the questions. But that didn't happen for too long. So I thought to maybe encourage this, that I would tell you a story from the Talmud. It has to do with asking questions. And the Talmud, the Talmud is the 2,000 years ago, the oral tradition was written down in what's called the Mishnah. And the explanation of that is what's called the Gemara. And together they're called the Talmud. And it's generally about laws, but there's a lot of stories thrown in. And it's called the Agadah, the stories. And we have certain characters throughout the Talmud who are speaking about the law, and two of them are Rebbe Yochanan and Reish Lakish, and they had a very special relationship, as the Talmud explains, through a question. The Talmud asks, why is Rebbe Yochanan not mentioned amongst the beautiful rabbis, or amongst the beautiful men? They're not talking about women, they're talking about men. And we know that Adam, the first man, was very beautiful. And Yaakov, the third generation, from Abraham, that he was very beautiful. And there was a rabbi, I don't remember his name, who was also very beautiful. And they said, Rebbe Yochanan was also very beautiful. Why was Rebbe Yochanan left out of this? So the reason is because he didn't have a beard. Not that he shaved his beard, he just didn't have a beard. He never grew a beard. But his skin was glowed, like they say, a goblet, a silver goblet, after being fired, when it's just like sort of not slowing down, but fading. And his skin glowed like that. And there's many stories of Rebbe Yochanan who would go to different people who were sick, and he would lift up the sleeve of his arm, and his skin glowed so that people became well. Took his hand and they stood up and they became well. They say, once Rabbi Yochanan was sick, and they asked him, no, make yourself well. And he said, you can't take yourself out of prison. You take someone else out of prison, but you can't take yourself out of prison. So as the story goes, and I also, one other interesting little tidbit about Rebbe Yochanan was that he would sit outside the women's bathhouse before they went into the mikveh, which would give them permission then to go home and to have sex. And he would sit outside there, and one of the rabbis asked him, it doesn't look good. You're sitting out the women's bathhouse. I mean, come on, man. And he said, no. He says, I'm not sitting here to see anything. He says, I want them to see me, because it's known that what a woman sees affects the baby. So these women are going home to have sex with their husbands. And if they look at me, they're going to have beautiful babies like me. That's Rebbe Yochanan. How did he meet Resh Lakish? So he was once, Rebbe Yochanan was bathing in the Jordan. And Resh Lakish saw him, saw the glow of his skin, and assumed this was a woman. So he jumped across the Jordan. And on the other side of the Jordan, he saw, oh, no, it's a woman. It's not a woman. It's a man. But Rebbe Yochanan saw how great was this man's power. And he said to him, if you will give your power over to Torah, you would be a great rabbi. And he said back to Rabbi Yochanan, if you would give your beauty to a woman, she would be quite beautiful. So Rabbi Yochanan said, my sister is more beautiful than I am, and I'll give her to you to be for your wife if you'll give yourself over to Torah. So Reish Lakish thought, no, I'm already a great robber, and I can become a great rabbi. So he gives himself over to Torah, he makes that commitment, and Rebbe Yochanan is going to be his teacher. And he says, let me just go across the Jordan and to get my things so I can accompany you. And he goes and to jump across the Jordan, and he falls in. And now he has a teacher, so he looks at his teacher, so what just happened? I could jump that way, I can't jump the other way. So Rabbi Yochanan explained to him that when a person gives themselves over to Torah, they have to start from the beginning. And everything else is removed from them. All the great powers they have, all the things they thought they knew. And you start as a child and you learn bit by bit, and then you have a very pure foundation for the Torah. And that's what he does. He goes off with Rabbi Yochanan, he gets married, he studies Torah, and he becomes a great rabbi. And he got to the point, everything Rabbi Yochanan would teach, he would ask dozens of questions. Just question after question. How about this? How about that? What if this happened? That happened. And the other students were like, why does this guy shut up already, But Rabbi Yochanan, he was all right with it, and he answered all the questions. And often one question led to another question, and, they got all mixed up where they were. But one day, Rabbi Lakish was Rabbi Yochanan was teaching, and Resh Lakish was listening, and he had a different opinion from his teacher. He thought it should be in a different way. They were talking about how to, like when the metal of a sword is considered made. This thing called Maka Hapatish, the last hit of the hammer, that makes the sword. And they had kind of a difference in when that point was. So Rabbi Yochanan says to Resh Lakish, no, you should know you were a robber. You went around with swords and shit. And Resh Lakish is thinking that maybe he's being put down by his teacher. He said, well, even when I was a robber, I was a great robber. And Rabbi Yochanan had a reply to that, and they went back and forth until finally Resh Lakish said something that Rabbi Yochanan felt was disrespectful, and he cursed him. And Resh Lakish fell to the ground sick, and he couldn't move, and they had to carry him off and put him in bed. And his sister, Rabbi Yochanan's sister, Resh Lakish's wife, came to him and begged him, take the curse off. My husband is going to die. And Rabbi Yochanan said, because he was a rabbi and knew the law very well and is extremely strict. He said, I can't. According to the law, I'm not allowed to do that. And Reish Lakish died. Oh, Rebbe Yochanan, he was so upset, and he cried and cried that Reish Lakish had died. And he complained, that every time I would teach, he would ask me dozens and dozens of questions. So his other students, seeing Rebbe Yochanan in such a bad way, they decided to try to comfort him. And they sent dozens and dozens of students corroborating what Rebbe Yochanan had taught. And he said to them, all of you together are not worth my one Reish Lakish. Because I don't need you to corroborate what I'm saying. I need you to challenge what I'm saying. That's what makes the Torah greater. If you say, I already know that I'm right. I don't need the corroboration. What I need is the question. Because the question is what makes the Torah to be bigger. And you even have a thing like this in science called the free radical. And the free radical gets into shit, into atoms, into molecules, wherever it goes, and it breaks things down. And from this, we get diversity. Without the free radical, we would have many fewer elements. Instead of, there's only 4 elements, but out of these 4, we can make all these different elements. The elemental table, that was called, or the something table, and it has over 100 of these things. And would have half or less than that if it wasn't for the free radical. And similarly in science, in society, that you also need, the free radical that breaks things up, shakes things up, that it's not just, this is the way it's always going to be. Because as things are disintegrating, and that's the nature of our world, is to disintegrate, that new things are made out of it. And that's the free radical that makes everything disintegrate like that. And when one element disintegrates, suddenly it becomes a different element. And that element wouldn't have been without the free radical. And also in society, you need people who are free radicals, who are free and they're radical. And in order to balance that, you need people on the other side who are not free, who are dogmatic, and they're not radical at all. They don't really have any radical thoughts because all they do is mimic what came before them. And these both sides are very necessary. It's just like in a court, like in the Supreme Court. It's a partisan court, and if it's a partisan court cannot give justice. There's no way that a partisan court can give justice. And one of the things that breaks apart, the partisanship is exactly, to break it up. That's the thing that they're thinking of adding more justices. And that's like breaking it all up. So you actually end up with a bell curve. That the way it is now, you got, I think, 4 justices on one side and 5 justices or 6 justices on one side and 4 and 3 justices on the other. So it's very, very tilted. And the only question is not what they're going to do, but how far they're going to go, how far they think that they can push the country to the right. And the left doesn't have enough power to pull the other way, so now you have partisan justice, which is not justice. And one of the ways to fix it is you have 9 justices. So if you added another 9 in the middle, then you would have a bell curve, which that's really the right way to do because most of the people are in the middle. And then you have these 2 extremities, and you need the 2 extremities. It's not like one's right and one's wrong, But in order to balance the middle, you need, it's like a bird flying. You just can't fly with one wing. You need two wings to fly. You need two legs to walk or to run. One's going front and one's going back. And that allows us to run. So without having, you want to have a good mix of that. And if it's going to be partisan, then you really want it to be equal. But the partisan, you really don't want it to be. You don't want it to be partisan. You want the partisan to be on the on the out parts of the curve. But for most people in the middle, they don't have. They're not. It's not that it's got to be this way or that way. They just want justice, and that's how it should be. And really, everything should kind of work like that. We have to do what's good for the majority, not what's good for the minority. Even though they might be very loud and yelling and screaming, they got to have this, but it's the majority that keeps us, solid and stable. And I'm saying that as someone who has never really been part of the majority. I'm certainly a free radical, but I recognize the need to have that opposite energy so I won't be too radical. And these very conservative people who want everything to stay the same, they need the free radicals so everything won't stay the same, and then together you go in the way of the middle. And the way that this can be accomplished is not by some sort of dictate or some sort of philosophy or some creed that's written down, but it really happens from asking questions. Asking questions are extremely important, and that's why we insist on asking questions like to politicians, though they never really give us a straight answer, and it's always, a little this, a little of that, trying to figure out what is going on. And in anything, what makes dogma is you're not allowed to question it. It's the way it is. And that gets us, gets people who feel like that, this is dogma, it's what I'm going to do. It doesn't have to be logical. It doesn't even have to be good. Well, I'm going to do it. And this causes, people to do that in other parts of their lives. Yes. So I just got a question from my friend Carol. And what's the definition of a free radical? Well, yeah, a free radical is a scientific thing. I'm not sure I can really define it well. But it's from what I remember, how I understand it, that the free radical just doesn't fit anywhere. So everywhere it goes, it tries to burrow its way in, and something that was working just fine, all of a sudden, is having problems working because this free radical stuck its head in there, and suddenly it's like, someone threw a wrench in the way everything was working. And once you do that, things start to divide. You got one on this side and one on that side, and maybe they start fighting with one another, and pretty soon they go their different ways. And each are different from what there was in the beginning. And the free radical, it just leaves and goes on to another perfect situation that needs to be broken. Why does everything need to be broken? So it can be put back together again. Because this is the world of tikkun, and tikkun means fixing. And that's how you fix something. If it's, you can't fix it if it's not broken, but everything in our world is pretty broken. And you have to, take these parts and even maybe break it down more until it can be fit together into something that really works. For example, the wonderful prophecy that in the future we will beat implements of war into plowshares, into something to make food with. And It doesn't say that the sword will suddenly, become a plow. We have to do it. We have to beat it. We have to mold it into something different. And this begins with questioning, wait, do we really need this? Do we really need all these swords in the world? There's more guns in America than there are people in America. And, and the inevitable is happening where people get pissed off and they grab their gun, or someone gets depressed and they grab their gun. I have been a person who've gone through a lot of emotional ups and downs in his life. I'm terrified to have a gun. I'd never have a gun. Because if you have a gun and you get depressed and you think, what am I living for? The answer is right there in front of you. Just end your life. But one thing I know, and I do know about these things, that the first thing that a person thinks after they do this is, oh fuck, what did I do? Because you start seeing right away that it's not what you thought it was. And it's sort of like in the 60s when we were all taking drugs, and people had different reactions to them. It was kind of dangerous. No one knew what did what. And the thing I always kept in my mind while I was on a drug is I'm on a drug. So if I have some sort of really, really strange thought, or if I'm like going to do something that maybe I wouldn't naturally do, or think something that maybe really bothers me, or see something that, takes me aback. Now remember, I'm on a drug. I'm on a drug. After I'm off the drug, I can think about what happened while I'm on the drug. No, I'm on the drug. I'll just, receive. I'm not going to make any, big decision of what I'm going to do in my life, at least. But actually, sometimes you do. Sometimes you see something with such clarity and you decide, man, that's what I'm going to do. But there's a difference. I mean, if it's something harmful to the human being, we don't want to trust ourselves. We want to look at what it is that we think about, because we all have questions, and the person who doesn't have who to ask a question to has to live with this question. The question can fester inside of a person, and until it can, they don't even know what's making them sick. But there's something in life that bothers them, and they don't know how to ask, and they just have to live with it. And questioning is something that allows the person to really show what it is that they lack. And some people, they're doing business and shit's going down and they don't know what it is, but they don't want to ask because they don't want to be seen as having that vulnerability. I think it's much better. There was this guy, who was his name? The big famous conservative, Buckley Jr. I don't remember his full name, but he was a very big intellectual, and he used to get people like on his show, his TV show, and they would kind of debate. And he would ask these people questions. Maybe the guy would be like a politician or a businessman or something. He'd ask these people questions using words that they didn't know. And instead of saying, I don't know the meaning of the word, they would make themselves fools by trying to answer the question, assuming they know what the word meant. And usually they were wrong. And, it's better just to say it's better a poor man than a liar, just better say, hey, I don't know. Even the Torah says that if someone asks you a question and you don't know the answer, you're supposed to say, I don't know. You're not supposed to make something up or try to like tell him something, make him think that you know something, but maybe you can't tell him, or some bullshit like that. You're supposed to say, I don't know the answer. We don't have to know the answers to all the questions. Even the real smart people, they don't know the answers to all the questions. But if you know the answer, you're obligated to share the answer with your brother or sister, anyone who needs an answer that and you know it, that you're obligated to answer it. This is the person asks you. The person doesn't ask you, and maybe you shouldn't answer it. But someone asks you, answer me this question. The answer. You have to answer it, even if maybe the answer is not going to be what the person wanted, but you still have to answer it because you have to be true. There was this guy, and he was known as a guy who was always true. And so once there was this thing, it was, in Europe, and the Jews were always, were very second, third class citizens, and so once there was a situation, and they arrested this Jew because they had to arrest someone. And the Jewish leaders came and they begged for this guy. We know you didn't do it, and you're just taking someone. So finally, they got the guy to relent. He says, I need some way to save face. So there's this guy, everyone knows there's this guy in town, and he's Mr. Truth. And so if he will come and, give witness, then, then we'll know. Then we can say, okay, so now we know, and the guy can get out. And this dude was so conflicted. He never told the lie, and now someone's life was on the line, and he had to lie in order to get this guy free. And it was such a difficulty for this man that he prayed to God. He was already an old man. He prayed to God, I've never lied in my life. And it's been really important to me. And now I'm being asked to lie. God, kill me. And in the morning, he was dead. He would rather die than lie. And hopefully they found someone else to get the guy off with. But, life is such a, it's not like we're all supposed to do that. That guy did it. That was his trip. We all have different things in life that are important to us, that we would die for, that we would live for, that we would give our lives for and give our energy for. And for someone else, it's not an important thing at all. But that's the thing, that God gave everyone a work to love. And because life without work is like they say about the Shabbat, the seventh day of the week is the day of rest. And but you can't rest if you didn't work. So you're supposed to work 6 days of the week. And then on the seventh, you rest. And he who doesn't work doesn't rest. I mean, how can you rest if you didn't work beforehand? So, and I know, like, just practicing, Jewish ways for over 50 years, that, every day is like, this is the first day of the Shabbat, or the second day of the Shabbat, or today is the third day of the Shabbat. And every day, you're getting closer to the next Shabbat. And on the third day, today, this is the last day that is connected to the previous Shabbat, and then tomorrow will be the first day connecting to the next Shabbat. Because now we've let go of the past, previous Shabbat, and we're going towards the future Shabbat. So we're right in the middle right now this week. Anyways, thank you for watching, listening. Feel free to go to my website, dovidhouse.com. Buy a book, man. Someone should buy a book. Anyways, anyways, say hi. See you later, man.